I mean, it wasn't like that. It was like these were
legitimate.
These women.
Deals.
No, these women were groomed to think that there was actual business. Yes, like she said, going on there. They were. The appointment was set. It was made.
Yeah.
An assistant would walk them right up there and maybe say something like, they'd come out looking pale and like, what the fuck was that? Excuse my language. And they'd say, and the assistants and the people around him would say, "Oh, that's just Harvey being Harvey. Don't worry about it. You're gonna, So in other words, it really doesn't hold water, in the sphere of victim blaming and all that to say why did they show up at the hotels in the first place? That's where he did business.
That's what I'm saying.
And they had a chance.
Why were the women setting him up?
One thing you said when you first asked this question, you said all of these assistants. Mm-hmm. And there's your clue right there. If a business person is good, they tend to have the same assistant, same trusted assistant, 20, 30, 40 years. If they're a good person and a good business person. If you're a crap, then you're going to go through assistants because those women realize what's happening.
Well, I don't know if these were long-term or if these were a series of assistants. All I know is that
some people have no morals or ethics as well.
Yeah. Money talks.
Money talks in this town in particular.
But Harvey Weinstein has no cock. He has no cock. I'm going with Mel on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
No reason to doubt that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a juicy headline for us, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then with regard to, Meryl Streep, that's one I've also wondered about is that, she didn't build a whole ton of her career around him, but she did get an Oscar nomination or two, maybe an Oscar.
Sure, Gwyneth Paltrow too, yeah.
Well, Paltrow told Brad Pitt early on, and Pitt confronted him, and Angelina Jolie claims that she was approached and never worked with him, and
Ben Affleck.
But Affleck, though, that got sketchy. He was like attacking him. Then turns out Affleck was also accused and may have known. You mentioned Mel Gibson earlier. Do you have any?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing about Mel Gibson that a lot of people don't know, and. What is it? You're a man of faith. What is it about when you do something, the humility behind doing something anonymously? You do good deeds. You don't need to tell the world everything you did.
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you this as a fact. People were wondering why Jodie Foster, would thank Mel Gibson at the Academy Awards and all that. Well, one thing people don't know about Mel is, since that all went ECH and the anti-Semitic slurs and all that, very quietly, Mel Gibson has been giving to Jewish causes for years now. And, I can say that. He's not going to say it. He probably wouldn't even confirm it, but I know for a fact that he's been doing as much. So he's getting right with his God, if you will. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
All it would take would be like a press release to basically clear his name, and
that's not him.
That's cool.
Well, why would she thank him? She was with one of the groups or what? Jodie.
What do you mean?
You're saying she thanked him?
Well, no, I think that she sees the good in this man and wanted to acknowledge
And Danny
that.
Glover, I interviewed him recently, but off the record he would talk as general, but he said, he was like, no, man, I love that guy. That's not who he is, period. Yeah. So bad night, Right. But anyway, so then, like, anything else you want to say about love to move on to Kevin Spacey, unless you have any.
I'll let Mel Gibson have the last word on Harvey Weinstein. I can tell you a bit about Kevin Spacey. Which is a formidable segue into Bryan Singer. But, it must have been back in 1994. I was writing for Spy Magazine. I had taken over the industry column for Celia Brady, which was that was. And I had the inside information on the production of Usual Suspects, as directed by Bryan Singer and written by Christopher McQuarrie. And what had happened was, and I got this literally off the set of Usual Suspects, was that Spacey was in his trailer. As he's wont to do, Bryan Singer had invited his boyfriend to the set, and his boyfriend was a young kid young guy from France. I say kid, but I assume he was of age at the time. I don't know. I wouldn't. Maybe I can assume nothing about Bryan Singer now, and we'll get to that. But what happened was Bryan walked into Spacey's trailer and he caught Spacey and his French boyfriend, who he had paid to come visit him on the set all the way from France. His boyfriend was sitting there. Spacey had his junk out, and there are shades of Sylvester Stallone, say my name, stroke, work the shaft, cradle the balls. Well, this guy was cradling Spacey's balls while Spacey masturbated, and I thought that was hilarious. So I came up with a name for him, and it was Nut Palmer. That's how I blind-eyed him, the kid from France, and and literally described what had happened, and that was that I didn't tell the story very well, but Bryan Singer walked in on his boyfriend palming Kevin Spacey's nuts on the set of Usual Suspects, and I thought that was hilarious. Wow. And if you go back to the archives in Spy Magazine, Google Docs or whatever, you can find that and have a laugh. Wow. Because it was probably when I just told it.
Well, so what I want to know is about Streep, though. Because she's such Hollywood royalty and so above this kind of need for a couch and whatever, do you feel that she really didn't know, or because she has that weird acceptance speech where she's like, "I want to thank Harvey God for for helping me." Could we pause? I'm sorry. The hell. Come in.
Younger men, but I didn't think it went in. I didn't think he was stupid enough, to be messing with kids underage. Mm-hmm. Well, so I actually, several years ago, I did a Allison Hope Weiner show with an FBI profiler named Jim Clemente, who was, saying this guy is a pedophile and he needs to be locked up. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, we don't have any, and I found myself defending him. I wish that YouTube video wasn't out there. There's maybe less than a handful of stories that I regret that I've published over the years. There's things that I've said that I regret. That's one of them, because now I'm absolutely convinced that this guy who I thought I knew is a complete pedophile, a drug addict, and a just horrible human being. And I expect him to disappear into Tangiers or something like that. He's gone. He's done. He's out of here, and he's going to leave the country, I think. Yeah.
Well,
wow.
He's going to run.
Have you heard anything about the recent production, the recent set he's been on, where he kind of disappeared halfway through production?
Well, that's the thing. It was a family issue. He has a sick relative. He was having fights with the guy who's playing
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury. Rami Malek is his name, I guess. There's all kinds of excuses, but the bottom line is he just wasn't there. He saw this shit coming down.
He took off.
The charges are coming up, and I think he erased his entire social media presence. This is a guy who's ready to take flight.
Yeah.
No question about it. And years ago, if you'll remember, on the set of Apt Pupil, based on the Stephen King novel.
That's weird.
Well, this was a movie. I don't know if you liked it or not.
Just creeped out by what I heard about it.
Yeah, well, it was written by a really good guy, a good friend of mine named Brandon Boyce, based on a Stephen King novella. Brian's directing that, and he conjured up this gym locker room shower scene, where the idea was it was going to be some sort of a metaphor for the gas chambers. And what he did was he had, and I don't know who ultimately did this, but they went to, where do you go to cast high school students in a shower scene? Oh, I know. Let's go to the San Fernando Valley to a Catholic high school, Crespi High School. Okay? I mean, this has scandal all over it, and they went and they cast their extras out of this high school, and many of them were underage, and they were asked to wear these little jock straps or little cover-ups and get for this scene. And you got to understand, there's Bryan Singer and the entire crew on a monitor watching this stuff. If I knew what I know about Bryan Singer now, then I would have been like, that's inexcusable. But I ended up New Times back in the day, and it was a cover story called Naked Shakedown. And it was about that. And gosh, I wish I wasn't so compromised. I wish I didn't know him. I probably would have done a better job with the story. But I remember my editor wanted to come meet him, and we go to his house. He was living in West LA at the time. And there were all these young guys walking around with towels around their shoulders. And I was like, this is like a bathhouse. This is like a revolving door of pimply-faced little twinks coming in and out of his house, and this doesn't look good. And I remember Bryan said, if you say that I'm gay in this story, I will sue you. And we were like, whoa, we didn't bring anything up about you being gay. We're just wondering what the heck is going on here. Well, what happened was the lawyer who had who had filed a suit against Bryan Singer, Phoenix Pictures. That was Mike Medavoy, and Gabriel Byrne was also a principal in Phoenix Pictures. And it was some lawyer, some ambulance chaser from the Valley, and I sat down with him, and he had basically told these kids that if we sue Bryan Singer over this, you guys are going to be driving Ferraris when you turn 16. Tip off right there, when you turn 16. These kids were like 14 and 15 years old in a shower scene. So it just didn't look good. But then the lawyer, and I got tape rolling, he's on over, and he said, and Bryan Singer's a pedophile. And he said that on the record. Now, of course, I get depositioned when, during this lawsuit, and, they're asking me what this guy said to me, and I said, well, he said Bryan Singer's a pedophile, and that was like so slanderous at the time that it kind of in part blew that lawsuit out of the water, and that pupil. And, unfortunately, I feel like I was complicit in not digging further into what kind of a person Bryan Singer really was at the time. And because he did on that pupil, he felt like he was untouchable. And I think that is, what happens with Hollywood people when they get power. Gay, straight, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They take them, they think they're above the law, and it can't touch them. And that was the case with Weinstein. Yeah. So it's really disgusting. But the Bryan Singer thing. Now I'm of the belief the guy is a sick pedophile, and something needs to be done.
Well, you're saying that you think he's going to run to Tangier or whatever. Then I'm surprised that Harvey hasn't. Run yet or whatever. He's still floating around. I mean, can these guys really get away and do that, or what?
Well, where's Harvey going to run?
Well, where's Bryan going to run? Money's money. They got money. Yeah.
That's really a good question. I think that ultimately the accused with that kind of power will probably the Tangier thing was a kind of a joke, but I think that they'll probably be. I can tell you, Bryan Singer hates this. He hates paying lawyers. But that's your life from now on, because this the litigation is not going to stop.
My theory is that Harvey Weinstein's going to seek amnesty in the Israeli embassy at Pico and Robertson, where Trump's going to move. That's what. There we go.
Actually, that's not too far off.
Nothing's crazy at this point.
But what about the?
He'll just go to Nicolas Cage's many private islands. And
Sounds so bad.
So what about the Trapped? You worked on Trapped in the Closet, because I want to make sure we touch on something from Scientology, and
you
that's
consulted
one of the
for that episode
grades.
of South Park.
Oh yeah, that was one of the hallmarks of my career. Getting the phone call from Matt Stone and Trey Parker asking me to come down and consult on an episode of South Park that they were doing. They had read my Spy magazine piece excuse me, Do You Want to Buy a Bridge, which was an expose I wrote about Scientology in 1996, I believe, from the inside out. I just walked in the door and I joined, and I went through as much as my editorial budget would allow, and things got expensive, so I tapped out of Scientology and I started meeting people who were in and who wanted to